Hanoi, October 26, 1967. Just past noon. The sky above Hanoi is a blistering white, dense with tropical heat and humming with the static of war. Flak bursts like dirty fireworks all around, clouds of black smoke punching holes in the blue. Below, the city crawls with anti-aircraft batteries, rocket nests and watchful eyes. It is a hornet's nest, and today the hornets are wide awake. High above it all, a single Navy A4E Skyhawk streaks through the chaos. It is small and fast, made for precision strikes, but it's also thin-skinned, vulnerable when the sky lights up with iron. Inside the cockpit, McCain grips the controls. His jaw clenches behind the mask. His flight suit is damp with sweat. The oxygen hisses, the gauges flicker. Everything in him is taut and trained. He is on his 23rd bombing mission, part of Operation Rolling Thunder, an air campaign carved from politics and fury. The target, a power plant nestled in the very heart of Hanoi. No American has ever flown so deep into this city without being shot down. Every inch of the route bristles with danger. Everyone knows it. McCain knows it. But he flies anyway. The alarm tone screams in his ears. Radar lock, then impact. The Skyhawk shudders violently. A Soviet-built SA-2 missile tears through the sky and slams into his right wing. The aircraft instantly yaws hard to the side. Metal screeches. The controls go slack. McCain's body whips against the harness as the plane begins its death spiral, tumbling nose first toward the earth like a dead thing. Smoke fills the cockpit. The altimeter spins. The canopy blurs with clouds and then buildings. No time. He pulls the ejection handle. An explosion. Then silence. Then violent, blinding wind. The seat rockets skyward, tearing him from the wreckage, but the force nearly kills him. His arms snap under the G-force. One leg goes with them. He is conscious, barely, as his parachute flutters open above Troopback Lake. The streets and rooftops rush up to meet him. And then the water. The lake is shallow, soupy, stagnant with city runoff and the ghosts of revolution. He plunges deep. The parachute drags behind him like seaweed. His limbs, twisted and useless, can't swim. Pain blooms everywhere. He sinks fast, bubbles spiralling toward the surface, but fate stirs. Fishermen and locals run toward the water shouting. They dive in, some with ropes, others with sticks. His flight suit is cut open. He is dragged to the shore, coughing, bloodied, barely breathing. The crowd swells. Someone kicks him. Another spits. The heat is unbearable. His body curls in on itself like paper in a flame. Hands tie ropes around his arms, then his neck. He is paraded through the streets, filthy, limping, beaten. A prize, a symbol, a hated thing. They do not yet know who he is. And he, John McCain, does not yet know how long the darkness ahead will last. Hoa Lo Prison, Hanoi. To the Vietnamese, it is just a prison, a place for enemies of the state, for traitors and spies. They call it Nha Tu Hoa Lo, the Hoa Lo prison, named after the old ceramic furnace shops that once lined this street. But to the American pilots who vanish behind its rusting gates, it earns a darker name, the Hanoi Hilton. A bitter joke, gallows humour wrapped in grit and defiance. The prison squats in the centre of Hanoi, hidden behind yellowing colonial walls built by the French decades earlier. Iron bars, thick stone corridors, mould-blackened walls. The French designed it to house 600 prisoners. By the time of the Vietnam War, it holds thousands. First Vietnamese dissidents under colonial rule, now downed airmen from the skies above. It is run by the North Vietnamese Army and their Ministry of Public Security. The guards are young, disciplined, suspicious. Many have never left the city. They refer to their American captives as Giak Lai, air pirates. And that's how they treat them. Not as soldiers, but as criminals, guilty of terrorizing women and children from the skies. There is no Geneva Convention here. only concrete, steel and silence. Inside, the Americans are kept in cramped cells, some no bigger than a closet, with a single bucket and iron shackles. Others are shared, grouped by rank, trust or pure randomness. Food is thin rice porridge, maybe a few vegetables, and the occasional protein from rat or insect. The walls sweat in summer and freeze in winter. Lights stay on through the night. The guards call it re-education. The prisoners call it breaking. By 1967, over 250 American POWs are locked inside various camps in North Vietnam. Many of them pass through the Hanoi Hilton at some point, some for weeks, others for years. Among them are Navy men, Air Force pilots and Marines. Some speak French, some only English. Many are Southerners, others from big cities. Their only commonality is that none of them expected to survive. Now, a new one arrives. McCain. Inside the walls of Ho Lo prison, mockingly known by American POWs as the Hanoi Hilton, time ceases to move in the way a free man understands it. Built by the French in the late 19th century to cage Vietnamese political prisoners, it was now under new management, the North Vietnamese. The irony twisted like smoke in the air, once used by colonizers, now repurposed for the resistance against a new foreign force. The thick yellow walls of the prison, cracked and sweating with mould, hold within them a silent army of captured pilots, Americans mostly, but also South Vietnamese, Thais, a few South Koreans. Some had been there for years already, their names nearly forgotten back home. Others arrived fresh from the sky, broken in body, wide-eyed, mouths still tasting the fear of falling from the clouds. The rooms were narrow, the light thin, the beds slabs of cement. If you were lucky, you might get a straw mat to ease the bone chill that rolled through in winter. Toilets were a single hole. Food came twice a day, cold rice, watery soup, occasionally a strip of pig fat. No medicine, no comforts. The real meat of the prison was in its silence, the way it pressed against your ears until broken by screams from the interrogation rooms. McCain was dumped into this place a wreck of a man, both arms broken, one leg shattered, ribs collapsed, shoulder dislocated. When the villagers pulled him from Troop Bach Lake, they beat him bloody, his flight suit already soaked red. They didn't know who he was, just another bomber who had fallen from the sky. But then, in the prison, the guards began to talk. The son of a Navy admiral, they whispered. The son of a commander of all US forces in the Pacific. He became valuable, a bargaining chip, a symbol. They gave him medical care, not out of kindness, but calculation. A crude surgery, unsterile tools, screams swallowed by concrete. His recovery was slow, racked with infection. But as his body began to knit itself back together in the filthy air of his cell, the battle for McCain's spirit began. He learned to communicate through the tap code, an invisible lifeline between walls. Tap, tap, pause. Tap, tap, tap. Messages of hope, warnings, jokes, scripture, a hidden brotherhood under torture. Each man refusing to break completely. They called it the code. Resist. Return with honour, no propaganda, no betrayal. You hold the line until you can't, and even then you find a way back to it. And the torture came often. Ropes cinched tight, joints ripped open again, sleep deprivation, starvation, beatings. His broken body became their canvas. Then one day everything changes. A high-ranking officer visits his cell, clean uniform, cold eyes. An interpreter walks behind him, arms folded. They sit on a stool. The officer reads from a file. McCain can't understand the words, but he sees something in the interpreter's face, something smug. The interpreter speaks. "We know who your father is. Admiral McCain, yes? Commander of Pacific Forces." McCain says nothing. "You are valuable. We will release you. You can go home. Today." He's stunned. Every instinct screams yes. He's dying in here. He knows it. The others know it. Bones stick out from his skin like branches. He hasn't walked in months. He can't lift his arm. But there's one problem. He was not the first captured. Military Code of Conduct says no one leaves unless it's by order of capture. First in, first out. To leave now would be to betray every man still behind those walls, to take the easy way out, to give the enemy their propaganda victory. He doesn't even need to speak. They see it in his eyes, the refusal, the old stubborn streak. So they take the offer back, and the torture returns, worse now, angrier. Time dissolves. It loses all meaning. The seasons bleed into each other. The guards become faces, not names. Some are cruel, others simply numb. McCain invents games to stay sane. Replays old football games in his mind. Builds fantasy ships and commands fleets across oceans. He relives conversations with his mother. Tries to remember the smell of grass, the warmth of sunlight on his neck, the exact shape of his wife's smile. Each day is a negotiation with despair. Some prisoners break, they sign confessions, they read scripts. But even those men, he refuses to judge them. Everyone has their limit. Everyone cracks differently. McCain comes close, many times. But still, every now and then, the taps return. Stay strong, we're still here. 5 years, 5 months, and some days that blurred into one another. That's how long McCain spent in captivity. Hoa Lo had become his world. Concrete walls, rusted bars, and that constant hum of resistance beneath it all. But even a war of wills has an end. It was early 1973. The Paris Peace Accords had been signed. The war, at least on paper, was over. The Americans were leaving Vietnam. And the prisoners, those gaunt men, with hollow cheeks and fire still flickering in their eyes, were coming home. They came in small groups, walked out of their cells under an open sky that felt unreal. McCain, now 36 years old, limped toward the airstrip in Hanoi in silence, his uniform hanging loose from his frame. His hair had greyed at the temples. His arms still didn't move right. He couldn't raise them above his head. But he stood straight as they read his name off the clipboard, handed over his gear, and led him to the waiting plane. The air around the tarmac was thick with humidity and tension. For years his body had known only confinement, and now he was being handed back to the sky. He didn't cry when the C-141 lifted off, and the jungle fell away beneath them. He just closed his eyes. For a moment he felt weightless and free. He landed in the Philippines first, at Clark Air Base, where doctors took him in. One after another, they peeled away the damage, examining bones that had healed wrong, muscles that had atrophied, lungs that had known too many infections. His body was a catalogue of injury. Multiple surgeries followed. He was flown to Jacksonville, Florida, to continue his recovery, placed in a naval hospital where even walking unaided was a challenge. But the reunions began too. His mother, his father, aged and grave, his wife Carol, waiting all those years, his fellow POWs, men he hadn't seen in full light in years. They told their stories in fragments, in quiet conversations behind closed doors, about the cells, the guards, the rope torture, the beatings, and about the tapping. McCain had always wondered who had been on the other side of that wall, the hand that tapped messages in the darkness, the stranger whose words had kept his sanity intact. Now in a hospital corridor he found out. The man was short, wiry, with a crooked smile and deep creases at the corners of his eyes. They didn't embrace at first, just stared. Years of conversation had passed between them without a single face-to-face word. And then, slowly, McCain reached out, his right arm, the one that still ached from rope binding, and shook his hand. "We talked," he said, smiling. For the first time in a long time. We talked for years. Those who returned home were changed. McCain was no exception, but inside him was a scarred foundation that had been forged in something deeper than pain. There was anger, yes, regret, but also a clarity. He had seen what men were capable of under pressure, both the cruelty of captors and the quiet, unshakable courage of those who refused to break. And though his body was still healing, McCain understood something more than before. Freedom wasn't a word. It was a choice you made every day, even in chains. He didn't plan to run. Not at first. John McCain came home to a country that had changed, and he was a man with wounds that didn't show on the surface. But something in him, something that had calcified in that prison, knew he couldn't just disappear into quiet retirement. Not when the world was still moving, not when his country was still asking for service. Politics found him the way gravity finds a falling stone. He began in the House of Representatives, elected in 1982, Arizona's 1st district, then the Senate in 1986. He took the seat held by Barry Goldwater, and it fit him like a rough old suit, ideological, occasionally prickly, but with weight and conviction. McCain didn't play politics the easy way. He scorned lobbyists, he clashed with party lines, he called out waste, even when it came from his own side. He was a hawk with a conscience, a Republican with a streak of independence that sometimes looked like rebellion. And people noticed. In time, they called him the Maverick. Then came 2000, a run at the presidency. He took on the Bush machine in the Republican primaries, lit fires in New Hampshire town halls, spoke off script, told hard truths. But politics, unlike war, rewards loyalty and machinery over courage. He lost, but didn't vanish. He returned to the Senate, weathered scandals, helped write the McCain-Feingold campaign finance reform. He stood against torture, even when his party wavered. He knew what it meant. He had lived it. 2008, one more shot at the White House. By now, he was a national figure, his face lined, his voice gravelled, his gait stiff with age and memory. He chose Sarah Palin as his running mate, a gamble meant to energise the Conservative base. At first it worked, crowds swelled, the press circled, but soon things spun, interviews faltered, the campaign narrative slipped from his hands, and then a town hall meeting, one that would linger in the national memory. A woman stood, uneasy and misinformed. She said Barack Obama was an Arab, that he couldn't be trusted. The crowd murmured. McCain took the microphone back gently, firmly. "No, ma'am," he said. "He's a decent family man citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with." It was a rare, unscripted moment of grace in a toxic election cycle. He lost the race, but gained something else, the respect of many who had voted against him. He stayed in the Senate until the end. He fought battles over immigration reform, healthcare and foreign policy with the same grit he'd shown in his youth. In 2017, his scarred body was diagnosed with glioblastoma, an aggressive brain cancer. He fought it as he always had, but this was a war not even McCain could outlast. He died on August 25th, 2018. His funeral was a gathering of former presidents, senators, soldiers and citizens, Democrats and Republicans, foes and friends. His body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, a rare honour. The last time he crossed the floor of the Senate, it was to cast the decisive vote against repealing the Affordable Care Act. His thumb turned downward like a Roman senator, a symbol, a statement. McCain was never simple. He could be stubborn, short-tempered, imperfect. But in the arc of a life that began in a Navy cradle and ended beneath the stars of the Arizona sky, he showed America something rare, honour that didn't ask for applause. In the silence after his passing, you could still hear the tap of a cord from a cell in Hanoi.